Good morning and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's call. We have Evalyn Greb with us today, and she's going to be talking about anxiety and new science of the brain, a really interesting topic, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Evalyn, before we get started, if some of our participants haven't been with us with you before, would you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Glenda. So nice to work with you and Minerva. I'm a licensed clinical social worker located in San Diego. Been here for my 50-year career. Worked in a lot of different types of social work. And it's not, it's not neuroscience, and it's not, but it is behavioral science. Social work is. So I've worked in adult day healthcare, in hospitals, in nursing homes, in-home care management, SNFs. I mean, you name it. I've kind of run the gamut, and even some school social work. So I'm just telling you that because I think that what I'm about to tell you in this presentation is that neuroscience, that neuroplasticity that's happening is actually leading to the ability for us to change our behaviors in a way that we never knew was possible, because we can change the way the neurons in our brain are talking to each other. So it's very exciting stuff. I'm really happy you're here today. It's really, I based it on a book that I'm going to tell you about. There are many indications that the research shows that it works much better than gold standard techniques to quit unwanted habits and addictions. And we all have those, gaming, anger, smoking, shopping, anxiety, drinking, judging, overeating, all of those things. But with some awareness and some attention and some mindfulness added to it, we can change all of that. And that's why it's so exciting. And I have a personal story that I'm also going to share with you. And just as an aside, everybody thinks that, AI is so cool and there's so much hype in the media about it. But I think this is much more interesting, because AI is going to make things more distracting, faster, more. There's just going to be more to learn, more that's input into your brain, more news, and I think this is more about your social connection, your social supports, your love of yourself, taking care of you. So I think it's very exciting. Anyway, let's get started.
Yeah, there we go. These are some of the learning objectives that Evalyn has put out there, and I'm not going to read them to you. That's silly for me. I know that you can read, but you can see what she's focusing on during the presentation today. So if you'll go forward, Minerva. All right, Evalyn, let's go. Anxiety.
Okay. There's good and bad anxiety, and it's very interesting because where anxiety started, where our primal brain started, was with man needing to eat, man needing to survive, man needing to sleep. So that's what our primal brain does for us. And, for so long, we thought that's all there was, that we had one set of brain cells forever. But that's not true. What we've learned with neuroscience and all of these new science things, which I want to tell you a little bit about, all the tests and scans and everything like that, is that we have a new brain overlaying that primal brain, and it's called the prefrontal cortex. And that prefrontal cortex, it takes the experience that we've had, and it uses those, and it makes coping mechanisms with those. And it's what can change. Is neuroplastic in our brain, because it can change the way the neurons are relating. And if we stick with anxiety, what we've got is just long-term habit, anxiety disorders, brain and immune system changes, and blah blah, which is just too much. And what we know is that almost 30% of the US adults have some form of anxiety disorder. When I stop talking, Minerva, you can just go ahead. And I know, again, I'm not going to read this, but there's a lot of interesting things here, what people worry most about. And this is all people, not just caregivers. There's so much going on right now. This is the part I'm talking about. AI is just going to beef up. You're going to hear more and more about it. You're going to get more news, more political stuff. And the other thing that I've read in these books is that there's all of this science that's going into, like the food, for example, the food industry. How do you get people hooked onto Doritos? Now, my granddaughter is hooked on Doritos, and they pay scientists to figure out what is the perfect combination of fat and salt and sugar to get them addicted to that food, to make them want to eat more and more and more. So those are the kinds of things that are going to happen with AI. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. The other thing at the bottom I want to talk about a little bit is old traumas, because what we know is, and we've heard from Dr. Jamie Heisman, that there's now a complex PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, which comes from your childhood. And so when you have anxiety, it can bring those things back up. Minerva? Thank you. So a lot of people think, let's talk smoking, for example. They think, okay, I can do it. I have the willpower. I've got the patch. I've got the things I put in my mouth, the lozenges, to change that habit. And caregivers, in addition to all of those sorts of habits and maybe unwanted habits, maybe wanted habits, maybe addictions, they've got all of these things that they experience by being caregivers. When it comes down to it, they're often exhausted, don't have time to read a book about how to unwind from anxiety, don't have time to exercise and do the things that they know, that we espouse all the time on these programs. Get out there, do something for you, put yourself first. And so many people that we've talked to were like, yeah, if I had time, if I had respite, if I could afford respite. So we know, that there are real limits to how much energy you have. And I'm hoping this one gives you something new. So when you have anxiety for a long time, it produces these stress hormones. And these are things like adrenaline. You can feel your heart beating faster. Things like, what are the other ones? Cortisol. Cortisol is a bad one because it keeps your blood pressure going up. And if that maintains for a long time, it's really bad for your entire immune system in your body. And it makes you more vulnerable to fears and anxieties. And what we've learned is that anxiety is a habit. People who get anxious because they're under stress, often get more stressed because they're anxious, and it's this cyclical thing. And it just can cause replays of that traumatic memories, maybe from our childhood or our teenhood. And we often treat it now by just trying to move past it, by denying it, by trying to distract ourselves with something else, by watching TV, by going online, by shopping, by doing these other habits that are substitutes for what we really need to deal with. Now, this primitive survival brain that I talked to you about, it's very interesting to me that it's from the cavemen, basically, when they were out trying to find food, and we still have that underlying our prefrontal cortex. We have the desire to eat. If we like something, we want to keep eating it. We have the desire to shop online, and boy, we're having a lot of fun doing this. And it's like, we're going to do our groceries online now, and we're going to, get our clothes online, and we're going to get our shoes online, so it's an addiction. It becomes a habit. And this is all about habits, because that prefrontal cortex, when it developed, it allows us to back out of those habits. It allows us to use our experience. Let me take smoking again for an example. So in the research, the guy, his name is Judson Brewer. I'm going to tell you a little more about him in his book. In the research, he said that when somebody came into his office and said, I want to quit smoking, I've tried 10 times, I don't know how to do it. He said, well, tell me how much you really enjoy it. or go home and have a cigarette and tell me how much you really enjoy it. And he said, the guy came back and he said, well, it actually didn't taste that good. He says, says, well, do it again and tell me how you enjoy the next one. And people, because they're thinking about it, and there's a way to stop and think about it, we're going to talk about, that they decide quickly that it's no longer what they liked. It's, something maybe they started as teenagers to be cool and they just kept doing it and it became a habit. And every time they sat down for coffee or for a cocktail, they're putting a cigarette in their mouth. So caregivers have even more problems because of all the fears in their life, the fears and worries and anxiety of taking care of a loved one, knowing, that the disease is going to progress, worried about death. We have so many things going on in our minds. And fear is adaptive, it's instinctual. And again, when it's immediate, it helps humans survive, like going across the street. And because you did it before, and that you almost got hit, you won't do that again. You're going to watch out. That's survival. But the prefrontal cortex uses that past experience for more certainty and a greater ability to plan, to predict, and to change.
That's kind of comforting, that last part you read there, that we can draw on previous experiences.
Oh, yeah. Now, the new research findings, say that whether it's good habits or bad habits, they can be interrupted. And attitude and awareness are the key. And attitude, number one, has to be an attitude of growth. So if we want to be, if we're fine with just watching TV when we're anxious, that's not going to work. We have to want to do something different. We have to want to learn something new. We have to want to change something in our lives. And that attitude of growth, I can change bad habits and unwanted behavior if I want to. And all it takes is awareness and reflection. Now, here's where mindfulness comes in. When I talked about the new science, in conjunction with mindfulness, mindfulness allows a now presence. The importance is immense because we have all of these thoughts in our brain, and they're like TV shows running day after day. And the current societal pressures and distractions make it even worse. Next slide. So mindfulness is, Jon Kabat-Zinn he's the Western father of mindfulness. It's actually an old Buddhist Zen master philosophy. And he turned it into a Western philosophy in the sense that he wrote things for Americans, for people, who are in the Western world instead of just Buddhists. And it's an awareness, and this is important, that's rising through paying attention in the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. And that doesn't sound like it's very hard, but I'll tell you, I'll tell you about my experience. It is hard. It uses awareness and curiosity to assess your habits. And so many of us, we've talked about habits that are some of our dementia, people with dementia have, and what triggers those habits. But do we think about our own habits and what triggers those? So what's going on in the old brain is different than what's going on in the new brain, because the new brain is saying, or can say, with mindfulness, why am I doing this? And do I want to keep doing it? So the emerging research, you won't even believe this stuff. When we talk about new science, this is what's going on. They're mapping the regions and functions of our brain. They have functional MRIs versus the ones that are diagnostic, which means they can, they can look at the brain, give you some kind of stimulus and say, all right, do you want a chocolate chip cookie? It lights up, yes. It's the center that gets pleased. So they can tell exactly where things are happening in your brain. The PET scan, positive emission tomography, thank you. the near infrared spectroscopy, the electroencephalogram, the EEG, or that's the same, and then the MEEG. And you can find all of those things on psychcentral.com. Next one, please. And here's what they're measuring. And this is what's amazing. So as they map the regions of the brain, most of these scans are non-invasive. They may take a blood sample, or one of them actually uses a contrast they put in your blood. But most of them are just these sensors on your brain, on your head, non-invasive. And the scan research has measured things like anxiety, epilepsy, TBI, sleep problems. And here's the one that I love, neural response to stimulus. So this is really the one that we're talking about. The stimulus, all right, it's prefrontal cortex. I'm smoking, it doesn't taste good. Do I want to keep doing it? That's the prefrontal cortex. It's asking the question. It's allowing us, to not go back to survival. That cigarette is, I survived that with that cigarette because I've had it since I was 18 and I have to keep using it. And they can also look at brain oxygen saturation, which I had no idea about, which I think is very interesting because it may have a lot to do with our dementia research. Next slide. So what is neuroplasticity? Given those scan results, the changes can be seen. So if you make a change, they can see it when they hook you up. They can be tracked and altered. Your habits can, and there's always this result and reward versus the bad that can be identified. So the result is either bad or there's a reward to it. And this is what's come out of this book that I really got so excited about. This is Judson Brewer's, who's not only a psychiatrist, he's a psychologist. And the reason he went back to school to become a psychologist is because he said, I didn't understand my brain, and I need to understand my brain. And that's how he wrote this book. And it's all about the habit loop and how you can change the habit loop. And his book is available on Amazon for $18. Totally worth reading. It's got all of his research that he's done, on these habit loops and what's happened with them. And he really is talking about how to break those cycles of worry and fear. So the fixed versus the growth mindset. This whole paradigm was researched by a woman named Carol Dweck in 2016. She was an educational researcher, and she really wrote this for schools, for education. But she said, if you never do your homework, if you don't want to learn, you're not going to learn. You can just go to class and do nothing. Said, but if you want to learn, if you want to get ahead, if you want to have fun, learning and making it exciting, you have to have some growth. You have to feel like you want it. You want it to get better, to get bigger, to get more educated. And the important part of this for us is, I think, so many times, and as I described caregivers before, we get stuck. We have these sticky thoughts. I can't do anything different. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I'm too tired. I don't have the resources. Those are sticky thoughts, but those are habits. So maybe we can get rid of those. And his research actually suggests that this habit loop process is successful in decoupling habit from reward. And again, we have many times talked about the triggers for our persons with dementia who are exhibiting bad behavior. And let's talk some more about our triggers and how we can identify those and how we can change those. Next slide. So anxiety is a habit. Anxiety triggers worry. Worry gets triggered by negative emotion. These two are cyclical.
8% connected.
These things go around and around. Here's an example of a habit loop. You have a negative emotion or thought, you worry about it, and you watch TV, or you go online and buy something shopping. But let me tell you, He, in his research, the people who are working on the habit loop, which is look at the trigger, look at your behavior, and then work for a reward rather than a bad result. So smoking, look at your behavior. You do it by habit, you pick it up, you light it up. What's your behavior? Are you going to just leave it at that and then, have COPD as you get older? Or are you going to think about, why am I doing this? Can I change this? Do I want to keep doing this? And then you have the result, which is something different and probably better than avoidance or distraction. People who worked on the habit loop in his research had a 63% reduction in anxiety. That's as opposed to 13% in the typical mental health care settings. Next slide. So again, naming the trigger, name the habitual behavior, name the result. Now here is the most important part about the role of mindfulness. Neuroscientists call the little pause before your reaction. That pause is learned in mindfulness training. So after the trigger, before you start the behavior, it's that pause that they call the magic quarter second, because it's that pause when you can go inside of yourself. You can say, I know me. I'm aware of who I am. I'm aware of what I'm doing. I can make changes. I can stop this before it triggers an emotional reaction. I can catch that thought. Next slide, please. Now you're going to die when you see this. His research showed, based on all the stuff that they put on your head, the average person has 60,000 thoughts per day, and they run like virtual reality. It's like a TV program. Okay, I did this yesterday. Oh, that person really wronged me. Okay, I've got to go get this to the store and get this stuff. I got somebody coming for dinner. It's a long movie, and mindfulness can turn it off. So you don't have to keep going over and over and over these things, because 95% of what you think today is the same that you thought yesterday, which seems like kind of a waste of time. Sometimes you need to emphasize stuff. But in the loop, if you use the habit loop, if you look at the trigger, say daydreaming, and your behavior then is mindlessness, I'm just going to keep going through this virtual, reality of my brain, then you can have really dire results. I mean, some more worse than others, but you can cut yourself if you're cooking, you can crash your car, you can fall down the steps, you can do many things that are unwanted behaviors. Next slide. So here's the good news. This is what I'm excited about. If we trigger mindlessness, we think about mindlessness, and we take that pause, that magic quarter second, and go like, okay, I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to go inside myself. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to think if I want to keep doing this. I'm going to turn off that virtual TV, and I'm going to be open, and I'm going to think about my goodness, who I am, how I want my life to be lived, and not have other people telling me how to live it. I want to respond differently. Now, this is all hard work. That response that he got from smoking, the researcher got from smoking, it took people, months to go and come back and think about it and work through it. And they weaned down the number of cigarettes. And then all of a sudden they decided it just wasn't worth it, and they quit. So having that awareness about your habit through mindfulness. And studies show that mindfulness actually targets the key links of reward-based learning. And that's what we're talking about here. It's all about rewards. So I already told you, breaking the smoking loop. Oh, that was anxiety I told you about. Breaking the smoking loop led to 5 times greater quit rates than current gold standard treatments. So we're talking about, all of the different stuff that's been used to try to help people to quit smoking. Next slide, please. So instead of this one, I'm going to disclose something personal that happened to me and how this helped me and why I feel like an infomercial selling it to you. And it's because I recently had a diagnosis of a fairly major health problem. I was so angry because I've taken good care of myself. I was so anxious. I was grasping for what to do. I couldn't sleep. And I remembered what Dr. Jamie Heisman had said about a woman named Tara Brach who had mindfulness trainings. And so I went online. They have 40 days, 10 to 15 minutes a day of mindfulness training. And I took that. And at the end of that, and even before the end of that, I began to no longer worry about my future health because I have today, because I have the present, because I know that I'm a good person and that I need to be tender-hearted toward myself and love myself. And that's what that mindfulness training can do for you. Next slide, please. So it increases your self-regulation, obviously. It decreases those sticky thoughts and rumination. Geez, we should have put the cow here,
Should have
Glenda.
put the cow in. The
I know,
cow
we
needs to
should
go
put the
here.
cow. I should have put the cow in. It increases your level of tolerance. And when we're more tolerant, people are drawn to us. If you're smiling at every single person on the beach and not picking out the good-looking guy or some person you want to be friends with, if you're tolerant of everybody, it really supports those relationships that will support you. And I'll tell you the one I'm working on now is to decrease my level of judgment of self and others. Because when I'm walking on the beach, sometimes I go, that guy should put a shirt on. So this is the link to Tara Brach's course. And again, it's free. It's for 40 days. It's only 10 to 15 minutes. It won't take a lot of your time. And you will be so surprised. It does take a quiet place, where you can really go inside of yourself, and try to figure these things out. Next slide, please. Okay, let's take another example. You had a long, hard day at the office. This is the bad example. And then you came home and you decided, I think I'm going to have a glass of wine to unwind. I'm going to go in my office and finish up this work. And by the time you finish the work, you've had the whole bottle of wine. And the next morning you get a headache. You're ashamed. People are very ashamed when they, have these habits that other people see as, addictive habits. And you're tired the next day too. So in the learning loop, you have a long, hard day at the office, and then you go home, and then you go, that magic quarter second, think, you know what? I'm going to start with a warm bath tonight, and then I'm going to get some sleep. I'm not going to do this again. And what's the result? You feel better. You begin to change a habit. It's just a beginning. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not just once, but that 40 days of mindfulness training will really help you out. Next slide, please.
If I can for just a minute, Evalyn, would you kind of not talk about this, but you've been through this experience. Is it kind of like baby steps? We can't do it all at once. We just have to do it a little at a time.
Yeah, it takes time. And, the other thing is, if you want to know about my experience over the 40 days, I felt myself becoming less and less stressed, less and less anxious during those 40 days. Just because I think I was gaining my own presence and appreciating my own presence. And it's a little hard to explain because it's not my area of expertise. but I know it worked so well for me. And again, I'm working on judgment now, and I'll let you know how that goes.
Okay, I want to know about that guy on the beach next time you see him.
So some of the ideas that were in the book by Dr. Brewer are, take a couple of your negative thoughts or negative habits that you have and write them down and see if you can unravel where they're coming from. Where did they start? Is this a habit that you want to keep? And know and name your triggers, your stressors. And that's through mindfulness. It was pretty easy in my case because, I knew what the stressor was. But you know what? I've had other really stressful things happen to me since then, and they do not affect me in the same way. It's very interesting. So you can use the habit loop to change your reaction to those stressors. Please, again, read Unwinding Anxiety by Judson Brewer, psychiatrist, psychologist. You will enjoy that. Next slide, please. I'm talking so fast.
We've got plenty of time. You can slow down if you want to.
Look at me, I took the water. So these are kind of worth going through because these are some of his suggestions and include my suggestions for, what are substitutes? So if you can't smoke or if you can't drink that wine when you get home, what else can you do? Well, if you pause and get into mindfulness and you get that snap, you can maybe do some breath work. Or you can, when you go inside, and I'm telling you, this happened to me, I really learned to be compassionate and tender with myself and not so hard. Because we all are our own worst judge. We all know that.
Yeah.
And, the other things that are great that we all know about, we've talked about so many times, walking, yoga, using tapes and videos. And those are mostly from our participants that we've had in these programs, Glenda. You can watch our WellMed Charitable Foundation podcasts and have that positive learning experience. Because so many of our expert presenters have talked about taking care of you. And this is a way to really take care of you. And then there's that self-talk. I talked a little about self-regulation, and self-talk is kind of the beginning of that. And you can self-talk yourself into getting really upset about things. That person really pissed me off. Can I use that word now?
Yeah, you can.
But you know what? I don't even know them. Am I horribleizing this situation? Am I making it worse? I'll never see this person again. Do I really care what they think about me? Or, do I need to, or is it that I'm angry with somebody else who said something like this in the past? And can I get rid of that? Can I think about that, where it came from, what I can do with it? And if you prioritize 15 minutes a day for mindfulness, all of these things will happen inside of you, I'm sure. Next
Is
slide.
this where the what ifs jump in to your brain when you're talking about horribilizing, and I call it catastrophizing?
Yes.
What if this, then this is going to happen, and what if, is that all in that same video?
And rumination is right there too. That cow always gets us.
Yeah, sure
because
does.
we begin to think about, the last time this happened, it just got worse and worse, or, the last time I felt like this, I got really sick, or someone, it's all of these things that we say to ourselves, that self-talk. Watch that self-talk and help you self-regulate. If I don't think about that past event, because it's over and done and gone. I have a friend who bought a new Kia. You'll love this story. She went to the dealer. She called a lot of dealers. She went to the one she thought she could get the best deal. And they told her it would be $26,000, which of course was the MSRP. Now she drives off after talking to them, and it's got a sunroof in it. And she really didn't want the sunroof, and she had to pay an extra $1,000. She went back for an entire week every day, telling them she didn't want the sunroof and she shouldn't have to pay the $1,000. And this is called rumination. This is called no point whatsoever. You have to just, cut your losses where they are, say, okay, let it go. And if you can do that, you can self-regulate. And here's some others. Forgiveness, gratitude. We hear these from our expert presenters, enjoying where we are, enjoying who we are, having a trusted person to confide in. And that's a really, really important one. If there's one thing that you could do when you are so anxious, you're beside yourself, or when you don't really know which way to turn, if there's one thing you could do, what I would say to you is call your best friend. Call them, talk to them, have them talk you down. That's really good medicine. And have those, have socialization scheduled with your positive friends. Plan days that include up things for you. And again, that's hard for caregivers, but it's so necessary. And it helps you build up resilience, your ability to rebound, which is a learned skill. That's not genetic. And you may see your parents doing it, or you may not, but you can still learn it. You can look in yourself and say, I'm really tired. I don't know if I want to be a caregiver anymore. I'm just feeling really burned out. I got to do something. Call that friend. Talk to him. Talk about the things you do like about it. Talk about the things that could make it more fun or better for you as the caregiver. Think about you. Be tender with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Reach out to people. Next slide, please.
Okay, before you get to resources, since you didn't put it in your slides, there's the ruminated cow. We don't want to look like that. That's a no-no. You said you wanted to have fun.
Yes. How did you ever find that? Did you just draw that?
No, I just jumped on my phone and found it for you.
You're
Sorry,
amazing.
everybody. Please indulge us.
You are amazing. Excuse me 1 minute.
Okay, definitely. So I see that a couple of people have dialed in on their telephone. So let me just take this second before she goes to presentation resources. That if you did register for the call, you will receive the PowerPoint presentation in an email that comes out with a survey. If you did not register for the call, you can call our customer service representative and she'll be happy to help you with that. So let me give the number for those people that have dialed in. It's toll free at 866-390-6491. And also for those people, let me give you our website just in case you don't have it. It's www.caregiverteleconnection. That's all squished together. Caregiverteleconnection.org. So now that you've had your drink of water, you want to go to your resources?
Well, this one particularly, this page, is because, much of what I'm talking about is not my stuff. I mean, I'm not a researcher. I didn't do any of these things, but boy, did I learn a lot from reading books, reading papers, going through the mindfulness training. And so that unwinding anxiety, Judson Brewer, just as an aside, when he was in medical school, he kept having panic attacks. And that's why he decided he needed to know more about his mind. Because every time he would go into a test, he would have a panic attack as a medical student. So it's a very interesting book. Tara Brach at the Radical Compassion Institute, and you've got a direct link before to the 40 days of beginning mindfulness training. And she has been, she said, she's been doing this for 20 years. And she has this wonderful, sweet, soothing voice that helps you really get into a place where you can go inside. John Kabat-Zinn is, he's powerful in his presentations. He's got a lot of stuff online to help anybody out if they want to really understand more about what mindfulness is and where it came from. And here's two quotes that I love from Judd Brewer's book. The ex-Facebook president, Sean Parker, told him that the site was made to exploit human vulnerability. And this is one of the things that I think AI, artificial intelligence, is also going to exploit. We need to, and the other thing about AI, I'm sure that you've heard, is you can put the same question in 3 different machines and you're going to get 3 different answers. So AI is not yet, it's got a long way to go, and we're not sure whether it's going to be really good or really bad. And you can read that pretty much everywhere. And then Albert Einstein said, and this is a quote from Judd Brewer's book, "Old man's advice to youth, never lose a holy curiosity." And that's all about asking that, taking that pause and asking that question. Is this behavior I want to keep, or is this unwanted behavior? Is this a habit that I want to continue or not? And what am I going to do about that? What's a substitute I can use? Where can I go inside myself to find the strength and the self-compassion and the tenderness and the strength to be able to do it? And then the other resources are resources that we've given out several times. There's nothing really too new here, except for, let's see, the Unwinding Anxiety has an app that's actually available only with Mac and iPad. If you want to, it has the habit loop application that shows you how to identify the trigger, look at the behavior, when to make the pause, and then to track your either bad result or your new rewards. So I just wanted to add that one to this. Otherwise, I think you've had these before.
Wow. The whole app. What's what we need is one more app on our phone to help us with the anxiety from the other apps we have on our phone. Okay, so that was a wonderful presentation, Evalyn. Thank you so much. So much information that we can use to take action to address our habits and anxiety. So we're at that part of the session where we would invite your questions, your comments. I didn't see that anybody, although I was chatting back and forth with people, I didn't see anybody put a question in there. You can unmute your phone if you called in on your telephone by pressing *6 if you have a question or a comment. Those of you on Zoom can unmute your microphone. You can raise your hand. You can go ahead now and put something in the chat box if you'd like to. We'd love to hear from you and what you thought about the presentation and the information that Evalyn presented. Yes, Susan, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was the right medicine at the right time. My granddaughter just started college, and in the last month, she's had horrible panic attacks. I mean, where she can't breathe, she gets weak, she throws up, and this is going to help her. She was wanting to take anxiety medication, but there's some real possible bad side effects from that. So I think this is going to help her. And thank you all for sharing this wonderful information. This is cutting edge. This is not drugging yourself out of your problems.
No, that's right. And
Thanks
Susan,
for
tell
sharing.
her when you get the PowerPoint presentation, you can share that with her. Or you can also let her watch the whole session on the website, on the Caregiver Teleconnection website. Once it's posted there as a podcast, she could just sit there and watch the whole presentation.
That's wonderful. And how do I access the podcast again? Do I
It's
go
going to
to
be on.
the
It's going to be on the Caregiver Teleconnection website. If you look over there in the chat box, I put that there.
Thank
And
you.
if you have any difficulty, call our customer service representative. She's there to help you. But I think it's nice, the situation that you mentioned, because she's in college, you know, it may be off hours when she can access this, so she can do it at her leisure.
Well, it was a miracle that she even got there. She didn't want to go.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, it was horrible. She wanted to stay home. And my daughter said, if you stay home, your world is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's a good thing she has you for a friend.
Isn't that the
And
truth?
thank you so much, Evalyn,
You-
for all your wonderful research and insight and sharing your personal experiences with us.
Thank
Much
you, Susan.
appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. I'll shut up now.
That's okay. I love that you spoke up. Anyone else have a question or a comment? Maybe something they've experienced along this realm, like Evalyn has. Yes, please go ahead. I can't see your name for some reason.
Oh, are you speaking of me?
I am, but I can't see your name on the screen. So please go ahead. You're just beautiful.
Bless you. It's been quite a day and very little sleep in the caregiver business. However, hi, I'm Yvette down in Mobile, Alabama, home of the original Mardi Gras. All right.
Oh, yes.
We love to have a great time, even in the midst of tough times. Just to simply address quickly the wonderful lady who just spoke. I was among, you probably couldn't tell now, but I was among those very shy kids, didn't want to go off to school because I'm like, oh my God, all these people, all this, whatever. I get to my faraway HBCU and I kind of kept to myself a bit, but little did I realize until other people told me that I pretty much a walking flashlight and I didn't even know it. All I can do is do me. My mother studied fashion and interior design. She dolled my sister and up like two fluff balls from baby. So I just do me, and it may as well be a t-shirt and cutoffs, and I'm out of here. So it's like, okay, I'm out for the day. I don't put too much thought in. I just make it happen and I walk out of the door. But to have the campus, it was like, well, who is this? And she doesn't talk to anybody. And who is this? Who's this? All the time. So finally, I just had to start, people will come up to me. They're like, my name is so-and-so. I already know your name is Yvette. I'm like, oh, okay. And we would just kind of get to talking. And I had to learn to get to know people and have people help me come out of my shell. And here I'm thinking, because I'm plus size, that, I'm kind of different, whatever case may be. But I guess I was raised by two folks that thought, you know what, the floor needs to move over, make more room for you. If you take up a lot of space, move them over and you take up all the space you need, baby. And that's what I grew up with. But I just, still kind of was somewhat on the shy side. So I'm glad that, she went off to school. I'm glad she will have an opportunity to have some experiences and meet some wonderful new people. We truly need people. And that's, Miss Greb, what I want to comment briefly is that this whole point of reaching out to people, seeking help, even if it's a counselor, if it's your best friend, if it's, again, my mother is in hospice here in this house with me, and all the nurses and various ones who come through, who support and do an amazing job, have made the whole experience so full and beautiful for all of us. So to that end, you do need people, you need to get it out of you. I have bought beautiful journal books for years. People have given to me as gifts for years. Most of them are blank. So I've just recently started to write things down, whether it's a prayer, whether it's a comment, just a general observation for a really unique day. And before my mom went in hospice here, 5 years, I cared for her older sister with no children with Alzheimer's. That was real interesting. Mm-hmm. But she's the type that I understand, if you're mellow in personality and easy to get along with, that kind of thing, you tend to stay that way, versus if you're like me with an opinion. And over the course of time, I've kind of developed a bigger personality. Some folks who were, I guess, opinionated or fussy or whatever, they get worse. Well, thank God mine was the former. My aunt was the sweetest, kindest thing, and she stayed that way all the way through the end. And when I would ask her my name toward the end, she didn't know who I was. But you know what? I appreciate everything you're doing. You're doing a great job. I'm very happy here. She said, this is a lovely care home.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for sharing. And I liked really what you said about, just be you. And that is important for all of us. Let's see, anybody else have a question or a comment? I got to put my glasses on because I'm going to tell you what's coming up on the Caregiver Teleconnection while you're thinking about that. Let me see here. Oh, I'm going to be back with you on Thursday. Evalyn, you mentioned Dr. Jamie Heisman, and he's going to be with us on Thursday. So I encourage you to join us at 1 o'clock Central Time on Thursday. He's going to be talking about moving away from the idea of codependency. And I've been with Jamie a lot, and so have you, Evalyn. And a lot of that goes back to what Evalyn talked about in her presentation about childhood trauma. And so he always touches on that. So if you want more information on that, I encourage you to join us on Thursday. And then next Tuesday, the 29th at 10 o'clock Central Time, Dr. Elliot Montgomery-Sklar is going to be with us, and he's going to be talking about what to know about new treatment for Alzheimer's disease. And that was what Yvette was talking about. So there are some things out there that are new, and he's going to be telling us about that. So I encourage you, if you're caring for somebody with dementia with Alzheimer's disease, join us then on Tuesday, the 29th. Any other questions, comments? We have a couple of minutes left. And thank you to all you who thanked us for the presentation. Thanked Evalyn for the presentation. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for listening to my very fast talk. I don't usually talk that fast.
And look, see, we ended up with time, Evalyn, even with the ruminating cow. Evalyn and I last year did a presentation, and we had a big picture of that ruminating cow, and we all do that to ourselves. We just keep thinking the same things over and over, and these pictures flashing in front of our heads. So
60,000 thoughts a day.
60,000.
Yes,
I'm tired.
where's one?
Absolutely. Well, if you've been with me before and been with Evalyn before, I don't hold people over just because we aren't at the hour that we're supposed to be ending. So Evalyn, I want to say to you that I certainly enjoyed the presentation. I enjoy that you're the one that did the research and got excited about this. And so that's a good thing. And to our caregivers, I want to thank you for all that you do for the people you care for. And stay strong and keep coming back to the Caregiver Teleconnection. We're here to help you. And that's the main thing that keeps us going. Right, Evalyn?
Oh, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
Glenda, I think, you know, I may be able to do some follow-up presentations, you know, as I learn more and read more. And because I think this is just, you know, this is such an exciting topic for people. And yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would appreciate that, Evalyn, if you would do that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you had a lot of choices. They say that on the airlines, don't they? You had a lot of choices in airlines, and you could have gone with any of them. You had a lot of choices on things to do today, especially if you're a caregiver and you chose to be with us. And I want to thank you for that. And I hope to see you soon on the Caregiver Teleconnection. Bye-bye.
thank you all.